Welcome to Another Thing. We come to you this week from Fairfield, New Jersey, the home of APL, Aqua Protec Laboratories, one of the premier certified environmental testing laboratories in the Northeast. I'm Larry Menti. I was just in the back. This is a busy place these days. Ever since the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, everybody across the country, it seems, wants to know, is their drinking water safe? Is their child's drinking water safe? In a moment, I'll take you back in the labs where we can see what they're doing back there and talk about potential problems in our area. Our topic this week is water safety and water infrastructure, and we begin our coverage with Ellen Kaloje. Ellen.
Thank you, Larry. The water crisis in Flint, Michigan was the perfect storm of politicians looking to save some money. But some local experts here in Pennsylvania say what happened in Michigan could absolutely never happen here.
Answer the question! Answer the question!
People in Flint, Michigan, and all over the country can't believe it's come to this. To cut costs, the city of Flint switched their water source from Detroit to the corrosive Flint River. Months later, researchers found 3 times the legal amount of lead in the water.
It's an emergency. There is the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, they routinely say there is no safe level of leads.
I will take responsibility for not pushing hard enough, but I will not take responsibility for causing this problem. It was not EPA at the helm when this happened.
I think it's an incredibly unfortunate situation that happened, but you know, we know that here in Pennsylvania, again, because of the regulations we have in place, that couldn't happen here.
Cosmo Servideo is the regional director for the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. He says the state's drinking water is safe and no one should have any concerns about a repeat of Flint happening in the Keystone State.
We would never see a city, a municipality, any water system for that matter, switch their water source and it go undetected. That simply could not happen because of Pennsylvania regulations and because of the programs and policies we have in place.
The Flint crisis has brought attention to concerns about lead all around the U.S. A USA Today study shows states with the highest amounts of lead in schools and daycare centers include Maine, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. And there are several bills in the Pennsylvania General Assembly right now to address the issue. Now, if you are concerned about lead in your home, there are a few things you can do about it. Make sure you only cook with cold water and make sure you run your faucet before drinking any water. For these tips and many others, go to the DEP website. Reporting for Another Thing, I'm Ellen Kaloje.
All right, thank you, Ellen. Now we continue our conversation on water infrastructure with the preeminent name in water testing in our area. Robert Barrett is with Aqua Protec Laboratories in Fairfield, New Jersey. Right now, we are in a laboratory where some testing is going on. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Larry, nice to see you.
I want to start with talking about Flint, although I know that it doesn't have a lot to do with what you're testing here. However, it does have something to do because it has raised concern across the country. Suddenly, a lot of people are concerned about water, something you've been raising the warning about for a long, long time.
Well, you're right. I think Flint just elevated the level of people being concerned of what their children are drinking, okay, in schools. And I think that's really what it did. And since Flint hit and the parents realized what was going on, I think all parents throughout the country are sitting home in the morning with sending their children off to school and saying, hey, what are they using to make his soup today? You know, what's the water that he's drinking out of the fountain today, or him or her? And I think that's really what's happened now, and now it's escalated to a level after they realized that a lot of the schools in New Jersey were failing, and when they did some preliminary analysis, and they started looking at old data, which they had been testing. But for some reason, these test results were not released.
Well, that's fascinating, because you've been doing testing for a long time. And you've been sounding the alarm for a long time. You've got a problem. In the past, people would ignore you.
Correct.
Because of Flint, are they paying more attention?
And now it's a whole different ballgame. As I'm sure you've seen, in New Jersey Senate has just introduced legislation, immediate legislation, to force schools to test for lead right away. I think it was $3 million proposed in the bill, $20 million for filters for the schools, but our phones have not stopped ringing. I mean, it's off the chart. And even from schools that are relatively new and built before 1890, I mean after 1982, which is really the area where they used lead solder and lead pipes, they still want to check and make sure that the drinking water is safe for their children.
This show is going to air in Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. You service all of those states with the exception of Delaware.
Correct.
Can you give an extent of the problem? I know you can't talk specifically about who you're testing, but can you give an extent of the problem in those states?
What I can tell you is for one individual school district, over 50% of the samples are failing right now. Okay, it's off the charts. I mean, we've never seen numbers like this, and it's primarily in the older schools. I mean, you have a school that was built 100 years ago, that they never changed the pipes and they never changed the fountains. You're going to have a problem. I mean, this is nothing. I don't think that they didn't think they had. It's just for, you know, it's expensive. It's a lot of infrastructure work that has to be done, and I just think that this was pushed to the back burner, and now it's at the top of the list.
Is there a state that's doing well or a school district that's doing well?
Well, the New York Times article on Sunday said that New York City has really proactively started doing this a long time ago and changing out the infrastructure. I think New Jersey is a little bit behind. I'm not really specifically aware of Connecticut's situation in Pennsylvania, but I know that they must have obviously older schools.
And that's the key, right? If their school is built before a certain time, and you can give me the year, if it's built before a certain time and they've done nothing to the pipes or they haven't addressed the problem there, chances are they got a problem.
There's no question about it. I mean, the solder that was used before 1982 to connect those pipes, whether they be inside the drinking water fountains or they be inside the school itself, was a lead-based solder. And as that lead-based solder deteriorates over time, it leaches. It leaches into the water. So while that water is sitting there overnight, that lead is leaching into the water. And if that child is not told to let the water run for a while before he takes his first drink, well, he's drinking lead.
Is the legislation from state to state appropriate at this point?
I think that the EPA is probably going to have to get into this thing and do something nationally. But I think New Jersey is already proactively doing something right now.
But you told me that schools don't have to test.
Right now, they don't. They're not required. If they're getting water from a public utility. Now, if it's a school that has its own well, they have been required to test. All right? But if a school's getting it in an inner city and it's coming from a utility like Passaic Valley Water or United Water or American Water, those samples are tested before they come into the school. Okay? So that the problem has to occur then once it gets into the school. And that's the key.
I see two problems. Not only that they're not required to test if there's water is coming from a public utility, but secondly, you've been giving them results. They've been burying them. Well, shouldn't they be disclosed?
I can't be the person to say that. I don't know what the results, where the results are going, but these schools have been testing. I mean, it's public information. I think Jersey City was testing from 2003. I know Newark was testing from 2007. The results probably were, they had some hits. I think some of them took some remedial action in an isolated instances where if they knew a fountain was no good, they ripped the fountain out. But I think the problem is so big, all right, that it's not something they can just fix with a couple of bucks here or there. I think this has to be really tackled as a major crisis in the school districts, in these old schools, and money has to be allotted, and the infrastructure has to be fixed.
When we come back, we're going to go into a lab with Robert Barrett from Aqua Protec Laboratories to see some of those samples he talked about and find out exactly what they're testing for when Another Thing continues.